February 11th, 1943. North Atlantic, 320 miles southwest of Iceland. Lieutenant Commander Robert Sherwood braces against the bridge rail of HMS Starling as another mountainous wave crashes over the corvette Esbau. Ice-cold spray stings his face. The convoy 32 merchant ships carrying fuel, food, and ammunition to Britain spreads across the gray horizon behind him, each vessel a lifeline his nation desperately needs. But somewhere beneath these rolling swells, something is hunting them. "Astic contact, sir." The shout crackles through the voice pipe from below. Bearing 270, range 1,200 yards. Sherwood's grip tightens. A U-boat. His crew has been at action stations for 16 hours straight, eyes bloodshot, hands trembling from exhaustion and cold. This is the third contact in 2 days. They've dropped pattern after pattern of depth charges, watching those massive canisters tumble from the stern, detonating in towering columns of white water. Each time, they've lost sonar contact the moment they passed over the submarine's position, a blind man throwing punches into darkness. The depth charges haven't killed anything. The U-boat has slipped away every time. "Come left to 270. Sherwood orders, his voice steady despite the hammering in his chest. Increase to full speed. Starling heels into the turn, her single propeller churning the Atlantic into foam. Below decks, leading seaman Thomas Mackenzie climbs the ladder to the forward deck, emerging into the screaming wind. He's not heading to the depth charge racks at the stern, not this time. Instead, he makes his way to the strange contraption mounted just forward of the bridge. A metal frame holding 24 spigot mortar arranged in 4 rows, each tube angled slightly upward and outward. It looks, frankly, ridiculous. Like something a child might design. The sailors call it the Hedgehog. Mackenzie and his team, 3 men as cold and exhausted as he is, begin their preparation drill. Each mortar holds a 65-pound projectile, a streamlined bomb with a contact fuse in its nose. Unlike the depth charges that detonate at preset depths whether they hit anything or not, these bombs are silent killers. They only explode on impact with a submarine's hull. Range closing to 800 yards, the Astic operator reports. His voice carries an edge of tension. "Contact firm." "She's diving, sir, going deep." Sherwood knows what the U-boat commander is thinking. "Go to the stern. Drop your charges. Lose contact and I'll slip away again." It's worked twice already. The German captain has probably reported back to Kriegsmarine headquarters about the clumsy British corvette that keeps attacking and missing. But this time will be different. "Steady as she goes," Sherwood commands. "Hedgehog crew, stand ready. 600 yards, 500. The Astic ping echoes back with crystalline clarity. They can practically feel the submarine's steel hull reflecting the sound waves. This is the moment that's been drilled into them during weeks of training, maintaining sonar contact all the way through the attack. No blind spots, no guesswork. 400 yards, the Astic operator calls. His voice rises with excitement. "Contact perfect, sir. bearing steady. Mackenzie's fingers rest on the firing lever. The wind howls around him. Somewhere below, in the crushing darkness and pressure, German sailors man their stations, confident in their ability to escape once again. They've heard about these new British weapons rumors passed between U-boat crews in Lorient and Saint-Nazaire. Some kind of forward-throwing mortar. Nothing to worry about, the veterans say. The British are desperate, throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks. Range 300 yards, comes the call. 280 yards, .2-6-0, . Fire. Sherwood's order cuts through the gale. Mackenzie slams the lever forward. The Hedgehog erupts. 24 mortar fire in rapid sequence. Thump, 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 thump. Rippling salvo that sends the projectiles arcing into the gray sky ahead of the ship. They rise in a graceful pattern, then plunge into the waves 200 yards ahead, disappearing beneath the surface without a sound. The spread creates an oval pattern 140 feet across, each bomb sinking at 17 feet per second. Then silence. No explosions. No towering water columns. No way to know if they've hit or missed. Starling charges through the impact zone, her Aztec still pinging, still tracking. Sherwood holds his breath. The crew on deck stares at the empty water. 30 seconds pass. 45. Mackenzie feels his stomach sink. Another miss. Another. The ocean erupts. A massive detonation rips through the water ahead, a geyser of white foam and debris shooting 60 feet into the air. Then another explosion. And another. 3 direct hits on the U-boat's pressure hull, each 35-pound Torpex warhead tearing through steel plating like paper. Contact lost. The Aztec operator shouts, but now his voice carries triumph instead of disappointment. Breaking up noises, sir. She's going down. Oil spreads across the surface, black, thick, unmistakable. Then pieces of wreckage. Wooden planking, a life jacket, a sailor's cap. No survivors surface. The pressure at that depth doesn't allow for survivors. Sherwood exhales slowly. His hands are shaking now, but not from cold. 400 feet below, the U-boat U-187, though Sherwood won't learn that until after the war settles onto the ocean floor with her crew of 48 men. Her captain never understood what killed him. No warning splashes. No time to evade. Just 3 contact detonated bombs finding their mark while the British corvette maintained perfect sonar contact throughout the attack. The Hedgehog has claimed its first kill of the patrol. And across the Atlantic, in the wolf packs still hunting Allied convoys, U-boat commanders are about to learn a terrifying truth. The rules of the game have changed. 16 months earlier, October 1941, Western Approaches Command Headquarters, Liverpool. Admiral Sir Percy Noble stands before a wall-sized map of the Atlantic Ocean, studying the red pins that mark merchant ship losses. Each pin represents a vessel sent to the bottom, and with it, cargo, crew, and Britain's dwindling hope of survival. In the past month alone, U-boats have sunk 63 Allied ships, The month before, 56. The month before that, 79. Britain is being strangled. The mathematics are quite simple, Admiral, says Commander Charles Goodeve, gesturing to a chart covered in figures. Goodeve heads the Directorate of Miscellaneous Weapons Development, a deliberately vague title for a department tasked with solving impossible problems. We're losing ships faster than we can build them. Food reserves are down to 6 weeks. Fuel stocks are critically low. If we don't dramatically improve our kill rate against U-boats, we'll be forced to negotiate by spring. Noble knows this. Everyone in this room knows this. What they don't know is how to fix it. Our corvettes and destroyers are making attacks, Captain James Rowley interjects. He commands an escort group that's just returned from convoy duty, his face gaunt from stress and lack of sleep. We're dropping thousands of depth charges, but our kill rate is abysmal. Less than 5% of attacks result in confirmed kills. Explain why, Noble says, though he already knows the answer. He wants it stated clearly on record. Rowley steps to the mat. The moment we acquire sonar contact and begin our attack run, we lose the submarine. Our Aztec is mounted in the bow, but depth charges are dropped from the stern. As we pass over the U-boat's position, we go def no contact for at least 30 seconds, usually longer. The submarine can turn, speed up, slow down, change depth. We're setting our charges to detonate at a preset depth, but we're guessing. We're blind. He pauses, his jaw tightening. And the U-boat commanders know it. They've developed evasion tactics. The moment they hear our propellers getting close, they execute hard turns. By the time our charges detonate, they're 50 yards away, far enough that the explosion won't rupture their hull. We might shake them up, spring some rivets, but we're not killing them. Goodeve picks up a depth charge fuse mechanism from the table. And even when we do bracket them, even when we get charges close enough to cause damage, these contact pistols are unreliable. 30% dud rate in cold North Atlantic water. The pressure mechanisms freeze, the chemical primers fail. We're dropping 400-pound canisters of high explosive that turn into expensive paperweights. Noble turns from the map. His career spans decades of naval service, but this war is unlike anything he's encountered. What about increasing the pattern? More charges per attack. We've tried, sir, Rowley replies. Some ships are carrying over 100 depth charges now. We drop them in patterns of 10, 14, even 20 at a time. It doesn't matter. The fundamental problem remains. We're blind during the critical moment of attack. And every charge we drop creates a massive disturbance that ruins our sonar picture for minutes afterward. The U-boat can do whatever it wants in that time. The room falls silent except for the ticking of a wall clock. Outside, Liverpool is preparing for another night of possible German air raids. Inside, these men are fighting a different battle, one of engineering, physics, and desperate innovation. There's something else, Goodeve says quietly. The Germans know our depth charge tactics are failing. U-boat command is getting bolder. They're attacking convoys on the surface at night, using their deck guns and superior surface speed. When we force them to dive, they simply wait us out. They know we'll drop our charges, lose contact, and eventually have to leave. Then they surface and continue hunting. Noble has read the intelligence reports. Grand Admiral Dunitz is planning to expand his U-boat fleet to 300 boats. If even half that number becomes operational, the Atlantic will become impassable. The war will be over. Show me what you're proposing, Noble says. Gudiv unfolds a technical drawing on the table. It shows a weapon system that looks nothing like a traditional depth charge rack. Instead, there's a multi-barreled mortar mounting forward throwing, with the projectiles launched ahead of the attacking ship. We call it the Hedgehog, Gudiv explains. 24-spigot mortar that fires simultaneously, throwing bombs 200 yards ahead of the ship. The projectiles sink rapidly and detonate only on contact with the submarine's hull. If they miss, they sink to the bottom without exploding. Rowley leans in, studying the diagram. Forward throwing? We'd maintain sonar contact throughout the attack? Precisely. Your ASTIC operator guides you right up to the target. You fire while still tracking. No blind zone. No guessing. And because the bombs only explode on contact, there's no disturbance if you miss. You can immediately reacquire the target and attack again. What's the warhead? Noble asks. 35 pounds of Torpex, equivalent to 45 pounds of TNT. Contact detonated against the pressure hull. That's more than enough to rupture it catastrophically. Rowley picks up the drawing, his experienced eye analyzing the design. The spread pattern, how wide? Approximately 140 feet in an oval. Given a U-boat's length of 60 to 70 meters and beam of 5 to 6 meters, if your attack is accurate, you're almost guaranteed multiple hits. Almost, Noble says, catching the qualification. The projectiles follow ballistic trajectories, Gudiv admits. Wind, ship's motion, sea state all affect accuracy. And you have to be close within 300 yards ideally. But sir, compare that to depth charges. We need to be within 50 feet horizontally and 20 feet vertically to achieve a kill. The Hedgehog gives us a 140-foot spread. We're trading precision for coverage. Noble walks to the window, looking out over the bomb-damaged city. Somewhere out there, another convoy is forming up, preparing to risk the Atlantic crossing. Young men, merchant sailors, many of them teenagers loading cargo they might never deliver. What's the development status? He asks. We have working prototypes at HMS Vernon. Initial tests are promising. We need approval to begin installation on escort vessels. There will be resistance, Rowley warns. Depth charges are proven technology, captains, trust them. This looks ... He gestures at the drawing. ... Experimental, untested in combat. Some will call it a toy. Then we'll need combat results to prove them wrong, Noble says. He turns back to face them. How quickly can you install the first units? Gudiv considers. 3 ships within 6 weeks. Another dozen by January if the trials succeed. Do it, but Commander, Noble's voice hardens. This needs to work. We're losing this war one convoy at a time. We need a weapon that kills U-boats, not one that just frightens them. Can the Hedgehog deliver? WWII meets his gaze. Sir, our depth charge attacks succeed 5% of the time. Our calculations suggest Hedgehog attacks, properly executed, should succeed 25% of the time or better. That's a 5-fold increase in lethality. Should succeed, Noble repeats. Based on calculations. Yes, sir. Then get me combat data. Real kills. Prove the mathematics work when men are dying in cold water. The meeting concludes. Orders are drafted. Engineers at HMS Vernon begin working around the clock to fabricate the first production Hedgehog systems. Escort vessels are identified for modification, older corvettes mostly, ships that can be spared from convoy duty for a few days of refit. In the shipyards, welders begin cutting into steel decks to mount the strange new weapon. Sailors gather to watch, making jokes about the contraption. It looks absurd compared to the massive depth charge racks they reaccustomed to, like mounting a fireworks display on a warship. The U-boat crews will be laughing too, soon enough. But not for long. December 1941. HMS Vernon, Portsmouth, the Royal Navy's shore establishment for mining, torpedoes, and experimental weapons. Lieutenant Commander William Scoresby watches as the testing crew loads another dummy projectile into the Hedgehog mounting. The morning is bitterly cold, frost coating every metal surface on the experimental range. Behind him, a small group of observers, other naval officers, civilian engineers, an admiral's aide taking notes, stand with expressions ranging from curiosity to open skepticism. Ready for firing trial number 17. Sir, reports Petty Officer Donald Barnes, stepping back from the mortar frame. They've conducted 16 tests over the past 3 days, working through a checklist of variables, different sea states simulated by wave tanks, various ship speeds, different firing angles. The Hedgehog S-Inventor, the team from Directorate of Miscellaneous Weapons Development, led by Charles WWII, has already demonstrated the basic concept. Now comes the hard part. Proving it will work when a ship is rolling in Atlantic swells, when the crew is exhausted and frozen, when a U-boat commander is executing desperate evasion maneuvers 300 feet below. Barnes triggers the firing mechanism. The spigot mortar erupt in their characteristic rippling sequence, each projectile launched by a time-fused cordite charge. The dummy bombs weighted to match the ballistics of live weapons, but painted bright orange for recovery arc into the gray waters of Portsmouth Harbor, splashing down in the predetermined pattern. Engineers with measuring equipment rush to record the spread. Divers will later confirm the exact positions where the dummies came to rest on the harbor bottom. Pattern dispersion looks good, one of the engineers calls out, consulting his plotting board. Oval approximately 42 meters by 43 meters. Scoresby nods, making notes. The mathematics work at least here, in controlled conditions. But he has been at sea long enough to know that controlled conditions are a luxury the North Atlantic doesn't provide. Lieutenant Commander. It's Commander Robert Hitchens, one of the observers sent by Western Approaches Command. He's commanded escort vessels in 3 Atlantic convoys, and his opinion carries weight. May I speak candidly? Hitchens gestures at the Hedgehog mounting. First, accuracy. Those projectiles follow ballistic trajectories. In a 4-7 gale, with the ship pitching and rolling, with the target maneuvering, what's the realistic hit probability? We estimate that with proper training and optimal conditions, a well-executed attack should achieve hits in approximately 30% of engagements. Poor conditions will reduce that significantly. Compared to depth charge attacks that failed 95% of the time, that's miraculous. But it also means 70% of Hedgehog attacks will fail. And when they fail, the projectiles sink without exploding, which means no indication of near misses. That's actually an advantage. Scoresby counters. When depth charges miss, they create massive disturbances that destroy your sonar picture. You have to wait minutes to reacquire the target time the U-boat uses to escape. With Hedgehog, failed attacks are silent. Your ASDIC stays clear. You can fire again within 60 seconds. Hitchens considers this, then nods slowly. All right. Second concern, reliability. Freezing spray, ice accumulation, salt corrosion. These spigot mortar have moving parts, contact fuses that need to function after impact. What's the failure rate? Current testing shows less than 5% duds, Barnes interjects. The contact pistols are mechanical, not chemical like depth charge fuses. More reliable in cold water. Current testing in Portsmouth Harbor, Hitchens says. Not in combat conditions, Scoresby replies. We can test until 1945, or we can deploy now and learn from combat data. The group moves to the briefing room, where detailed technical drawings cover the walls. The Hedgehog system is deceptively complex despite its simple appearance. When fired, the cordite charge in the projectile's tail explodes, driving the bomb off the spigot and into the air. Installation requires cutting into the forward deck, explains Chief Engineer Arthur Marsh, pointing to a cross-section diagram. We mount the frame just aft of the bow, forward of the bridge. Total weight, approximately 1 ton. We also install a dedicated firing station on the bridge with an electrical firing circuit. Each projectile weighs 65 pounds. In calm seas with trained crew, reloading all 24 bombs takes approximately 12 minutes. In combat conditions at sea, double quotes Marsh shrugs. 20 minutes minimum. Realistically, you get 1 attack, maybe 2, before you need to break contact and reload. Better than depth charges, Hitchens admits. We can roll those off the stern continuously, but we're blind while doing it. Scoresby spreads a chart on the table, a tactical diagram showing attack geometry. You close to within 500 yards, maintaining continuous tracking. The projectiles land ahead of your bow in the submarine's projected position. Silent misses. You still have sonar contact. You adjust your solution and fire again. Over the following weeks, the first operational Hedgehog installations begin. HMS Buttercup, a Flower-class corvette, enters dry dock in Liverpool. Welders cut away her forward gun platform, replacing it with the Hedgehog mounting. Looks like a bloomin' vegetable garden, mutters able seaman Jack Crawford, watching the installation. The Hedgehog's mortar, arranged in 4 neat rows, do somewhat resemble garden implements. The nickname sticks. Lieutenant Peter Mason, Buttercup's first officer, studies the technical manual. The firing procedure is straightforward enough. Maintain sonar contact, close to effective range. Press the firing button. But the manual is written by engineers who've never faced a U-boat in the North Atlantic darkness, never felt the terror of knowing a torpedo might be streaking toward your ship at any moment. Sir, it's the ship's Aztec operator, leading seaman Frank Wright. Permission to speak about the new weapon? Granted. The lads are nervous, sir. They've trained on depth charges for months. They know the procedure, know what to expect. This Hedgehog ... it's different. What if it doesn't work? What if we're attacking and it misfires, or the projectiles don't spread properly, or... Then we'll have learned something valuable. Mason interrupts, but not unkindly. Right, I'll be honest with you. This is experimental. We're the test crew. But here's what I know. Depth charges aren't working. We've made 7 attacks in my time aboard Buttercup. 7 U-boat contacts, 7 attack runs, 0 kills. Not because we're incompetent, but because the weapon system has fundamental flaws. The Hedgehog might not work either, but at least it's trying to solve the right problems. Wright nods slowly. So we single quotes read ... what guinea pigs, sir? Pioneers, Mason corrects. And if this works, if we prove the Hedgehog can kill U-boats reliably, every escort vessel in the fleet will get one. We'll save convoys, save ships, save the men on those ships. And if it doesn't work? Mason doesn't answer immediately. Outside, another convoy is preparing to sail merchant ships loaded with cargo, escorted by vessels armed with weapons that fail 19 times out of 20. If it doesn't work, Mason finally says, then clever people back in Portsmouth will figure out why and design something better. But we have to try, right? Because what we're doing now isn't enough. Buttercup completes her refit and rejoins the escort fleet in January. 1942. 2 more ships receive Hedgehog installations, HMS Eglantine and HMS Gorliston. Their crews drill endlessly, practicing the new attack procedures until they can execute them in their sleep. Unlike depth charges, which merely require sailing over the target and releasing, the Hedgehog demands precision. Range estimation must be accurate. The Aztec bearing must be steady. The ship's speed must be calculated correctly to ensure the projectiles land where the submarine will be, not where it was. By February 1942, the 3 Hedgehog-equipped vessels are declared operational. They sail with their next convoys, heading into the killing ground of the North Atlantic, where U-boat wolfpacks are waiting. The weapon has been tested, the crews trained, the mathematics verified. Now comes the moment of truth. March 7th, 1942. The snow is falling so thick that Lieutenant Peter Mason can barely see Buttercup's bow from the bridge. It's 0320 hours, the darkest part of night, and the convoy of 41 merchant ships wallows through heavy seas somewhere to the south. Mason's corvette patrols the northern flank, one of 6 escorts trying to protect a formation that stretches across 12 miles of ocean. 2 nights ago, U-boats penetrated the escort screen and put torpedoes into a tanker and 2 freighters. The explosions lit up the horizon orange flames against black sky. Men screaming in the water, burning oil spreading across the waves. The escorts dropped depth charges, drove the U-boats down, but achieved no kills. Wright's voice cuts through the bridge, sharp with adrenaline. Bearing 345, range 2200 yards. Solid contact, sir. Moving left to right. Submarine, definite. Mason feels his pulse quicken, but his voice stays steady. Sound action stations, come right to 345. Increase speed to 12 knots. Men tumble from their bunks, pulling on life jackets and helmets as they run to their stations. On the forward deck, the Hedgehog crew 6 men, led by Petty Officer Barnes, merge into the freezing darkness. Snow immediately cakes their oilskins. Barnes checks each mortar by touch, his fingers numb even through thick gloves. The electrical firing circuit shows green on the test panel, everything ready. She's at depth, sir, approximately 200 feet. Classic convoy attack positioning. The submarine is trying to get ahead of the formation, to surface and attack from forward where escorts are thinner. Steady on 345, the helmsman confirms. Buttercup surges through the swells, her single propeller churning. The corvette is designed for endurance, not speed, but 12 knots is enough. They're closing the range steadily. His hands adjust the ASTIC controls, fine-tuning the return echo. Bearing steady. Depth estimate 180 feet. This is the moment where, traditionally, they would continue closing until they were directly over the target, then drop depth charges and hope. Guess at the U-boat's evasion maneuvers. Roll explosive canisters into the black water and pray. Range 800 yards, Wright calls. 7-5-0... 700... On the forward deck, Barnes grips the manual firing lever. The electrical circuit runs to the bridge where Mason's finger hovers over the firing button, but if that fails, Barnes can trigger the mortar mechanically. Backup systems. Mason can feel the weight of the moment. This isn't a test firing in Portsmouth Harbor. This is combat, a German crew somewhere below, men his own age, sitting at their stations, watching depth gauges and listening for the telltale sound of propellers overhead. They're probably confident. Range 400 yards, Wright says. His voice is tense but controlled. Bearing 344. She's steady, sir, holding course and depth. The projectiles will arc forward 200 yards, sinking at 17 feet per second. The U-boat is at 180 feet depth. The bombs will take approximately 10 seconds to reach target depth. 300 yards, bearing steady. The Hedgehog erupts with its distinctive rippling. This charge, thump, 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 24 projectiles launching in rapid sequence. The recoil rocks the corvette slightly. The bombs arc into the darkness, visible for just an instant as dark shapes against falling snow, then disappear into the black water ahead. Projectiles away, Barnes reports. All mortar fired. The Aztec continues pinging, the echo returning strong and clear. This is the advantage. They haven't lost contact. Wright can still track the submarine's exact position. The Aztec operator's eyes are locked on his display, headphones clamped tight, listening to every nuance of the returning echo. 30 seconds since impact. The projectiles have either hit or sunk to the bottom without detonating. In a depth charge attack, the ocean would be boiling with explosions by now, the water torn apart by detonating charges, the sonar picture destroyed. Contact still firm, Wright reports, and Mason can hear the uncertainty in his voice. Did they miss? The explosion is a muffled boom that travels through the water and shudders through Buttercup's hull. Then another, and another. A fourth explosion, larger than the first three. The submarine's batteries have ruptured, or perhaps a torpedo warhead has cooked off. "Breaking up noises, sir." Wright's voice is nearly drowned out by the sound traveling through the water, the unmistakable cacophony of a submarine's death. Metal tearing, bulkheads collapsing, the pressure hull crumpling under millions of pounds of water pressure. She's going down. Definite kill, sir. On the forward deck, Barnes and his crew stare at the empty ocean ahead. Just darkness and snow, and then, suddenly, the evidence rising from below. An oil slick spreading across the surface, gleaming in Buttercup's searchlight. Debris follows, wooden planking, pieces of cork insulation, a rubber boot, an officer's cap with the distinctive white cover of the Kriegsmarine. Mason keys the radio. HMS Buttercup to Convoy Escort Commander. Confirmed U-boat kill. Hedgehog attack, 3 to 4 hits. The response crackles back almost immediately. Escort Commander to Buttercup. Confirm Hedgehog kill. Confirmed. 3 impacts. Catastrophic damage. Wreckage and oil on surface. The corvette turns back toward the convoy, leaving the oil slick and debris behind. The kill will be officially recorded, analyzed, added to the growing data on Hedgehog effectiveness. Mason considers the question. With depth charges, you're always guessing. You drop them, you wait, you see these massive explosions, and then nothing. The U-boat is gone, you've lost contact, you don't know if you got close or missed by 100 yards. With the Hedgehog ... double quotes he pauses, choosing his words carefully. We watched the target the entire time. We fired when we had perfect range and bearing. The projectiles hit exactly where they were supposed to. No guessing. No luck. Just mathematics and execution. And again. Until either we killed her or she escaped. But we wouldn't have lost her the moment we attacked. That's the critical difference. 300 miles to the east, at U-boat headquarters in Lorient, France, the disappearance of U-656 is noted when she fails to make her scheduled radio report. It's not unusual submarines are sometimes lost to operational causes, mechanical failures, or unlucky encounters with escorts. The war at sea is unforgiving. But something unusual is happening in the Atlantic. They report contact with convoys, report beginning attack runs, and then ... silence. No distress signals. Corvetton caping Hans Ludwig Witt. intelligence officer for BDU, U-Boat Command, begins collecting reports from returning U-boat commanders. A pattern emerges: strange attack runs by British escorts. Ships maintaining contact longer than usual. Explosions that sound different from depth charges. They have something new, Witt tells his superior. Multiple boats are reporting unusual attack patterns. The British are maintaining sonar contact through their attacks now. Previously, they would lose us when they passed overhead. Now they're tracking continuously. That would be the logical conclusion. Perhaps mortar-launched depth charges. 4 confirmed kills in 6 weeks, all against U-boats that were conducting convoy attacks, all in circumstances where depth charges had previously been ineffective. Disturbingly so. Whatever this weapon is, it's working. The U-boat offensive has been succeeding because British anti-submarine weapons were ineffective. Depth charges could be evaded with proper tactics. But if the British have developed something more lethal, all boats are to report any unusual attack patterns immediately. We need to understand what we're facing, but understanding comes too late for many. By May 1942, 12 more escorts have been fitted with Hedgehog systems. The weapon is no longer experimental, it's operational, and the installation program is accelerating. And somewhere in the North Atlantic darkness, another U-boat commander is about to receive a very unpleasant surprise. July 17, 1942. Captain Lieutenant Ernst Kraning stands in the control room of U-751, studying the hydrophone operator's hand signals. 3 fingers raised, 3 ships detected. Then a circling motion escorts making patterns around the convoy. Kraning nods, satisfied. It's the expected configuration. 30-some merchant vessels, probably 5 or 6 escorts. His boat has been trailing this convoy for 6 hours, staying deep, staying patient. 4,000 meters, Herr Kalu, reports the navigation officer. Convoy making 8 knots on course 090. Kraning has commanded U-751 for 8 months now. Survived 5 patrols, sunk 11 Allied ships totaling 48,000 tons. He knows the British escort patterns intimately, the corvettes and destroyers that weave back and forth ahead of the convoy, trying to detect submarines before they can reach attack positions. The key is patience. Wait for the escort pattern to open a gap. Slip through at periscope depth. Get ahead of the convoy. Surface after dark and attack from forward, where the escorts are thinnest, where they're not expecting threats. Depth is steady at 60 meters, reports the chief engineer. All systems normal. It's a proven tactic. U-751 has used it successfully on 3 previous patrols. Strike from darkness, dive before the escorts can respond, slip away while they're blind. Hydrophone contact bearing 185, the operator suddenly announces. Single screw, corvette type, range ... closing. 1,500 meters. An escort breaking from the pattern, coming directly toward them. Can he detect us at this range? The U-boat's electric motors slow to barely a whisper. Every man freezes at his station, barely breathing. Sound travels far underwater. and a skilled ASTIC operator can detect even small noises: a wrench dropped, a hatch closed too hard, men talking. Minutes pass. The hydrophone operator's hands sign continuous updates. Escort bearing 180, range 1,000 meters. Bearing 178, range 800 meters. Crining's jaw tightens. It happens occasionally. The British get lucky. Their sonar beam sweeps across a submarine at just the right angle. Usually it doesn't matter. The U-boat goes deep, stays quiet, and the escort passes overhead, dropping depth charges that explode harmlessly in the empty water. The electric motors die completely. U-751 drifts at 60 meters depth, carried only by current and momentum. The crew stands frozen, watching depth gauges and inclinometers, ready to adjust trim if the boat starts rising or sinking. Ping of British ASTIC. The sound reflects off U-751's steel pressure hull and returns to the escort, giving away position, depth, bearing. But that's acceptable soon. The escort will be overhead, will lose contact as it passes above, will drop its depth charges in the wrong position. Bearing 175, range 500 meters, signs the hydrophone operator. Single screw, Corvette type confirmed. Speed approximately 10 knots, standard attack run. Craning calculates quickly. At 10 knots, the escort will be overhead in 90 seconds. They'll drop depth charges set to detonate at 50 and 100 meters. U-751 is at 60 meters close, but the charges need to be within 10 meters to cause serious damage. The odds favor the submarine. "Stand by for depth charging," Craning announces calmly. All hands brace for shock. The men grab handholds, stanchions, anything solid. The cook wedges himself in the galley doorway. Depth charging is terrifying. The noise, the shock waves, the knowledge that if a charge detonates close enough, the pressure hull will split like an eggshell, but it's survivable if you're prepared. The ASTIC pinging grows louder, more insistent. Ping ... ping ... ping ... Aboard HM's Rochester, Lieutenant John Watkins grips the bridge rail and watches the range close. His ASTIC operator, leading seaman Thomas Parker, has maintained perfect contact for the past 4 minutes. The submarine is at 60 meters, holding steady course and speed, probably believing it can wait out a conventional depth charge attack. They're about to learn differently. This is his 4th U-boat contact. The previous 3 escaped. But this time, everything is perfect. Clear sonar return. Steady target. No evasive maneuvers. The submarine commander thinks he's safe at depth, thinks the British will lose contact during the attack run. On Rochester's forward deck, the Hedgehog crew stands ready. "Range 250 yards, Parker calls. "Contact perfect, sir." She's just sitting there. The projectiles arc forward in their distinctive oval pattern, plunge into the Atlantic, vanish beneath the surface. Inside U-751, the hydrophone operator suddenly signs urgently, multiple splashes ahead. Not depth charges, something different. Craning feels a flutter of concern. Ahead, not astern. Yevil, the first Hedgehog bomb strikes U-751's forward deck casing at precisely 0947 hours. The blast tears through the deck plating and ruptures the forward ballast tank, but doesn't breach the pressure hull, not yet. 2 seconds later, a second projectile strikes amidships, impacting the pressure hull directly between frames 14 and 15. This time, the shaped explosive wave punches through 40 millimeters of steel plating like a sledgehammer through glass. Seawater erupts into the control room at crushing pressure. Craning has perhaps 2 seconds to comprehend what's happening. We're hit. How are we hit? The escort is still 200 meters away before the third projectile detonates against the conning tower. The explosion is catastrophic. The conning tower's side plating disintegrates. The pressure hull beneath it splits vertically. Boot ist am Sinken. Someone screams. The boat is sinking, but it's already too late for emergency procedures. The pressure at 60 meters is 90 pounds per square inch. Men are swept from their feet, slammed against bulkheads. The lights die instantly. Craning grabs the periscope housing as water surges past him. The fourth projectile strikes the stern, rupturing the after torpedo room. Close watertight doors. Craning roars, but it's hopeless. The control room is already neck-deep in water, men fighting just to keep their heads above the surface. The chief engineer manages to spin the valve wheel for the ballast blow system, but compressed air screaming into flooded tanks achieves nothing. U-751 slides downward, her bow rising, her stern sinking. The down angle increases to 60 degrees. Men lose their grip, tumble backward into the flooding compartments. Someone S-hand grabs Craning's arm. He doesn't see who. Then the grip loosens, and the man is swept away into darkness. The pressure hull groans, rivets popping like gunshots. At 100 meters depth, a crushing sound reverberates through what's left of the boat, the after pressure hull collapsing entirely. At 120 meters, the forward compartments implode. Ernst Craning's last conscious thought is wondering what weapon hit them. Depth charges don't hit. Depth charges explode near you. What was this? What? U-751 settles on the ocean floor at 280 meters, crushed flat, carrying all 44 members of her crew to the bottom. On the surface, the oil slick appears within seconds. Then debris, cork floats, pieces of wood decking, a leather jacket, documents that immediately begin dissolving in salt water. UMSS Rochester circles the impact zone, her crew watching the evidence rise. 4 distinct detonations, Watkins reports to Western Approaches Command by radio. Hedgehog attack, multiple hits, submarine destroyed. Wreckage and oil confirmed. In the radio room, the operators copy the transmission and add it to the growing file. Rochester's first kill. The Hedgehog's 12th confirmed destruction. The tally is rising. By August 1942, 23 Royal Navy vessels carry Hedgehog systems. By October, 37. The installations continue through autumn and winter, expanding from corvettes to destroyers, from convoy escorts to hunter-killer groups. The weapon's success rate climbs with crew experience. Early attacks achieve hits in 22% of engagements. By late 1942, experienced crews are scoring hits in 38% of attacks, exactly as the engineers predicted, and nearly 8 times better than depth charges. At U-boat headquarters, the intelligence reports grow increasingly alarming. 15 submarines lost to unknown forward-throwing weapons in summer 1942, 23 more in autumn. The survival rate for U-boats encountering British escorts drops from 85% to 61%. Dunnett's orders captured British sailors interrogated about the new weapon. Some know nothing. Others mention the Hedgehog, describe it as a mortar system, forward-mounted, firing ahead of the attacking ship. Forward-throwing, Dunnett mutters, studying the intelligence summary. So they maintain sonar contact during the attack. They can track us continuously, and the projectiles only explode on impact, adds his intelligence officer. If they miss, there's no disturbance. They can fire again immediately. Our evasion tactics turning under depth charge attacks are useless. Countermeasures. Limited options, Herr Admiral. We can increase depth when attacked, but that only buys seconds. We can try radical evasion, hard turns, speed changes, but if they're tracking continuously, they can adjust their aim. The fundamental problem is that we can't evade what we can't anticipate. Dunnett stands at the wall map showing U-boat positions across the Atlantic. Red pins mark known locations, black pins mark boats overdue and presumed lost. There are too many black pins. This changes everything, he says quietly. If the British can kill U-boats at 4 times the previous rate, if this weapon spreads through their escort fleet, ... double quotes. He doesn't finish the sentence. He doesn't need to. Everyone in the room understands the mathematics. The U-boat offensive depends on sinking ships faster than they can be built and killing fewer submarines than can be replaced. If those equations reverse, if escorts become efficient killers instead of nuisances, the entire strategy collapses. The Battle of the Atlantic is entering a new phase, and the Hedgehog is rewriting the rules. May 1943. Western Approaches Command Headquarters, Liverpool. Admiral Sir Max Horton stands before the same wall map that Admiral Noble studied 18 months earlier, but the picture has changed dramatically. The red pins marking merchant ship losses are fewer this month, only 34 vessels sunk in April, down from 95 in March. The black pins marking U-boat kills tell an even more striking story. 15 German submarines destroyed in the first 3 weeks of May alone. Gentlemen, Horton addresses the assembled escort commanders. We are winning. Hedgehog-equipped vessels now comprise 42% of our escort fleet, Gretton reports. Their kill rate per attack is 34%. That's 1 U-boat destroyed for every 3 attacks. The Hedgehog is 5 to 6 times more lethal. Hedgehog ships working with depth-charge vessels? If it misses, depth-charge vessels follow up while the Hedgehog ship reloads. We've seen U-boats forced to surface after sustained assault, at which point they're destroyed by gunfire. The Germans are changing their tactics in response. U-boat command has issued new standing orders. If attacked by forward-throwing weapons, execute immediate emergency, deep dive, and radical evasion. Go to maximum depth, change course unpredictably, remain submerged as long as battery power permits. A U-boat that is diving to 300 meters and running at flank speed isn't attacking convoys, it's trying to survive. And even evasion fails when our operators are skilled. Last week, HMS Swale made 4 consecutive Hedgehog attacks on a single target over 18 minutes. The U-boat evaded the first 3 salvos. The fourth achieved 3 hits. Submarine destroyed. Initial Hedgehog deployments suffered from inexperienced crews, poor range estimation, premature firing, inaccurate depth calculations. But after hundreds of attacks, the techniques are refined. Training programs now include extensive practice with dummy projectiles, teaching operators to judge range and bearing by sonar echo characteristics alone. We're also seeing improved reliability, Gretton continues. Early projectiles had 8% dud rates. Current production, less than 3%. Cordite charges function reliably in gale force winds. The weapon system is mature. Lieutenant Commander Robert Sherwood, the Starling captain who achieved the first Hedgehog kill in this narrative, describes a recent engagement. We contacted a U-boat at dawn, 1,400 yards range. Maintained tracking for 6 minutes while closing. Fired at 300 yards, the optimal range we've identified. Got 2 hits within 8 seconds. The submarine attempted emergency surface but couldn't maintain buoyancy. 9 minutes. A year ago, that same engagement would have taken 30 minutes of depth charge attacks, probably resulting in the U-boat's escape. The Hedgehog has compressed the kill cycle, given escorts the ability to destroy submarines before they can evade or counterattack. The strategic implications ripple outward. Convoy losses are declining not just because more U-boats are being sunk, but because submarines are being forced away from the convoy routes entirely. U-boat commanders who encounter Hedgehog-equipped escorts increasingly choose to break contact rather than risk attack, a fundamental shift in behavior. Aboard U-264, North Atlantic. May 19, 1943. He has us, looks mutters. Emergency dive, looks orders. Take her to 250 meters, full ahead on electric motors. Execute evasion plan delta hard right turn to 090, then hard left after 60 seconds. The plainsman pushes the diving planes to maximum down angle. The depth gauge needles swing, 100 meters, 120. 1-40. He's weight multiple splashes in the water ahead. It's the forward weapon, the Hedgehog. Looks feels ice in his stomach. They've been briefed on this, the British mortar system that fires ahead, that maintains sonar contact through the attack. Depth 180 meters. Turning to 0-9-0. Double quotes. 24 projectiles sink through empty water, hit the ocean floor 1,200 meters below, and don't explode. But the British operator still has sonar contact. He watches the U-boat turn, calculates the new intercept, relays corrections to his captain. 2 projectiles pass within 5 meters of U-264's hull, close enough that the crew hears them slicing through the water. A distinctive whistle hiss sound that makes everyone freeze in terror. Depth 200 meters, the plainsman reports. 2-2-0.2-4-0. U-264 heels into the turn, her electric motors drawing massive current from the battery banks. The needle on the battery charge indicator swings toward red. The third Hedgehog salvo lands 15 seconds later. A second projectile misses by 3 meters. The remaining 22 bombs sink past the U-boat and continue to the seafloor. Lux realizes they're going to survive this. The British are firing blind despite their sonar contact. They can track position but must estimate depth, must guess at evasion maneuvers. U-264 is deep, maneuvering radically, forcing the escort to constantly recalculate. The electric motors slow. The U-boat settles deeper, conserving battery power, trying to disappear. The ASTIC pinging continues. The escort hasn't lost contact, but after 4 minutes without another Hedgehog salvo, Lux allows himself to hope. But the attack has achieved its purpose. U-264 is running, not fighting. She's burning battery power, diving to dangerous depths, putting distance between herself and the convoy. Even if she survives, which she does, she won't return to attack position for hours. The convoy will be far away by then. This is happening across the Atlantic. U-boats are being forced onto the defensive, their captains choosing survival over aggression. The psychological impact is profound. Submarine crews who once hunted with confidence now spend their patrols listening for the distinctive sound of Hedgehog mortar firing, knowing that when they hear it, they're seconds away from death. U-boat headquarters, Loryang, May 24, 1943. The causes vary: aircraft attacks, convoy escorts, mines, operational accidents. But increasingly, the reports from surviving boats mention encounters with forward-throwing weapons. "We're losing the technological edge," Dunitz tells his staff. Now ... He gestures at the law statistics. Now they have weapons that negate our advantages. They maintain sonar contact. They attack while tracking. They achieve kills at rates we never anticipated. Acoustic decoys to confuse their sonar. The discussion continues for hours, analyzing tactics, equipment, training. But the fundamental problem remains. The Hedgehog has shifted the balance. What was once a weapon system with a 5% kill rate, barely an inconvenience, has become a reliable submarine killer, achieving success in over 30% of engagements. The numbers are inexorable. If current loss rates continue, the U-boat fleet will be depleted faster than shipyards can replace it. If convoys reach Britain intact, if the Atlantic supply line remains open, Germany cannot win the war. In late May 1943, Hitler orders a temporary withdrawal of U-boats from the North Atlantic convoy routes, an implicit admission that the Battle of the Atlantic is being lost. The withdrawal isn't permanent. U-boats will return to the Atlantic equipped with new technology, employing new tactics. But the period of German dominance is over. The Allied escorts have become hunters rather than mere shepherds, and the Hedgehog is one of the weapons that made the transformation possible. By June 1943, 112 Royal Navy vessels carry Hedgehog systems. By August, 153. The weapon spreads to Canadian and American escort vessels as well. The U.S. Navy begins installing Hedgehogs on destroyer escorts in June, rapidly expanding the deployment. The final statistics for 1943 tell the story. Allied merchant ship losses dropped by 68% compared to 1942. U-boat losses increased by 73%. The kill ratio submarines destroyed per merchant ship sunk reverses from Germany's favor to the Allies' favor. The Hedgehog isn't solely responsible for this reversal. But the Hedgehog provides the killing blow, the weapon system that turns sonar contacts into confirmed kills. Escort crews who spent 1941 and 1942 making fruitless depth charge attacks, watching U-boats escape time after time, now achieve regular kills. The psychological impact is enormous. Crews gain confidence, aggressive tactics become standard, and the hunter-prey relationship reverses. For U-boat crews, the opposite occurs. Experienced commanders are killed, replaced by inexperienced ones. Morale plummets. The Kriegsmarine struggles to find volunteers for U-boat service, where life expectancy has dropped to weeks rather than months. The weapon that U-boat crews laughed at, the toy Hedgehog launcher with its absurd garden implement appearance, has become the thing they fear most. Its silent misses mean escorts can attack repeatedly without losing sonar contact. The Battle of the Atlantic grinds on through 1944 and into 1945, but the outcome is no longer in doubt. The Allies control the sea lanes. The convoys get through. Britain survives, feeds itself, builds the forces necessary for the Normandy invasion. And in the depths of the Atlantic, the wreckage of dozens of U-boats serves as testament to the effectiveness of a weapon that seemed laughable until it proved deadly. May 8, 1945. Germany has surrendered. Lieutenant Commander Robert Sherwood, now a full commander with a Distinguished Service Cross, looks at the Hedgehog mounting on his ship's forward deck. The weapon that seemed so experimental, so uncertain back in February 1943, is now standard equipment across the escort fleet. Starling has made 47 Hedgehog attacks during her service, achieving 14 confirmed kills. 14 U-boats that will never threaten another convoy, never send torpedoes into merchant ships, never kill Allied sailors. Around the harbor, other escort vessels fly victory pennants. Byron shows 4 kills. The final statistics are still being compiled, but the preliminary numbers are staggering. Over 3,000 U-boats constructed by Germany during the war. 783 destroyed by Allied forces. More importantly, the Hedgehog's psychological and tactical impact far exceeded its raw kill numbers. U-boats avoided areas with known Hedgehog-equipped escorts. Attacks that would have been pressed home in 1941 and 1942 were abandoned in 1943 and 1944 when forward-throwing weapons were detected. Convoys that would have been decimated arrived intact because submarines couldn't penetrate the escort screens. Permission to address the crew, sir? Barnes turns to face the assembled sailors. Lads, we've done something important here. By the end, we were killing 3 U-boats for every merchant ship they sank. And this weapon, he pats the Hedgehog mounting. This thing we laughed at, this contraption that looked like it belonged in a garden shed, this saved thousands of lives. It's true. The merchant sailors who reached port safely who never knew how close. U-boats came to sinking their ships who survived because an escort as Hedgehog attack destroyed the submarine before it could fire torpedoes. They number into tens of thousands. The British civilians who ate food delivered by those ships, who used fuel transported across the Atlantic, who wore uniforms. War is won by logistics as much as by battles, and the Hedgehog kept the logistics flowing. Commander Charles Goodev walks through the Directorate of Miscellaneous Weapons Development one final time before the facility begins its peacetime conversion. The urgency is gone now. No more desperate midnight calls about convoy losses. No more rushed prototype testing. No more pressure to deliver weapons that work perfectly on the first attempt. He pauses at a display case containing a cutaway Hedgehog projectile. Nothing revolutionary in any individual component, but the combination forward-throwing, contact-detonated, maintaining sonar contact throughout attack was revolutionary in application. Commander Goodev? It's a young engineering officer, clipboard in hand. The success rate, 34% of attacks resulted in kills. That's exceptional compared to other anti-submarine weapons, but it also means 66% of attacks missed. Did you ever consider that a failure? With Hedgehog, when we missed, the projectiles sank silently and we maintained contact. Ships often made 3, 4, even 5 consecutive attacks on the same target. The cumulative probability of a kill over multiple attacks was much higher than the single attack percentage suggests. So the real innovation was maintaining sonar contact. Depth charges detonated whether they hit anything or not. Massive disturbance. Ruined sonar picture. Wasted explosives. Hedgehog projectiles only exploded on impact. That meant our operators got immediate, unambiguous feedback. Explosions meant hits, silence meant misses. No guessing, no uncertainty. That feedback loop allowed crews to refine their techniques much faster than with depth charges. Critical. It solved the fundamental problem of anti-submarine warfare. How do you attack a target you're tracking? Drop charges astern and you lose contact during the attack. Fire ahead and you maintain tracking throughout. It seems obvious in retrospect, but it took years to develop a reliable forward-throwing system. The spigot mortar technology was the key. Simple, reliable. No complex launching mechanisms to fail in North Atlantic conditions. What about improvements that weren't implemented? Things you wanted to add? Goodev considers. We discussed larger warheads, but 35 pounds of Torpex proved sufficient. Any hit on the pressure hull was catastrophic. We considered guided projectiles, but the technology wasn't mature enough. We experimented with different spread patterns, but the standard oval proved optimal. Honestly, the weapon worked well enough that major changes weren't necessary. Sometimes the first design is the right design. The conversation continues. technical details and historical context blending together. When it concludes, Gudiv returns to his office and writes his final report on the program. The conclusion is brief. The Hedgehog anti-submarine projector achieved its design objectives, maintaining sonar contact during attack, providing unambiguous hit feedback. Approximately 130 U-boats were destroyed by Hedgehog attacks between 1942 and 1945. The weapon's indirect effects forcing U-boats onto the defensive, preventing attacks before they could begin, enabling aggressive escort tactics, likely saved hundreds of merchant vessels and thousands of lives. North Atlantic, October 1946. Her captain, a veteran of the convoy runs, stands on the bridge wing and watches the empty horizon. No escorts accompany them. The U-boat threat is gone. The war is over. Ships sail independently again, following direct routes rather than zigzagging, showing lights at night rather than running in darkness. For 5 years, crossing the Atlantic meant constant vigilance, convoy formations, depth charge explosions in the distance, the occasional torpedo track that sent everyone scrambling for life jackets. Now there's just endless water and sky, peaceful and serene. "Hard to believe it's really over," says the first officer, joining him on the bridge wing. 30 ships packed together, U-boats circling like sharks, escorts charging around dropping charges. Lost too many good men to those bastards. My cousin was on Starling, one of the escort corvettes. He said toward the end they were killing U-boats left and right. Some new weapon, Hedgehog or something. Damned effective, apparently. The U-boats went from being the hunters to being the hunted. About time, too. Neither man knows the technical details of how the Hedgehog worked, doesn't understand the engineering challenges that were overcome, can't calculate the probability curves that transformed a 5% kill rate into 34%. They only know the outcome. They're alive, their ship arrived safely, and the convoys got through. The Hedgehog didn't end with World War II. Its fundamental principles, forward throwing, contact detonated, maintaining sensor contact during attack influenced anti-submarine weapon development for decades. The U.S. Navy developed the Weapon Alpha in the 1950s, a rocket-propelled successor to the Hedgehog with longer range and heavier warheads. The Royal Navy created the Limbo mortar system, a 3-barreled weapon that could fire larger projectiles to greater distances. Both systems retained the Hedgehog's core innovation, attacking ahead of the ship while maintaining sonar contact. Modern anti-submarine warfare employs even more sophisticated weapons, homing torpedoes, rocket-assisted projectiles, helicopter-delivered munitions, but the basic tactical principle remains unchanged. You maintain contact with your target. You attack in a way that doesn't compromise that contact, and you use weapons that only activate when they hit. Everything that followed built upon its foundation. Their pressure hulls are collapsed, their interiors silted over, their crews' remains long since returned to the sea. These wrecks are war graves, protected by international law, visited occasionally by deep-sea explorers and archaeologists. Some still show the characteristic damage patterns, multiple small ruptures in the pressure hull, blast damage focused on specific frame sections, evidence of catastrophic flooding. Forensic analysis can identify Hedgehog kills versus depth charge kills versus aircraft attacks. Each weapon leaves its signature. The men who crewed those U-boats, German sailors, most of them young, many of them conscripts, were not evil. They were serving their nation as they understood their duty, fighting in a war they didn't start. Their deaths were tragic in the way all war deaths are tragic. Young lives ended violently, potential unfulfilled, families left grieving. But those same U-boats, had they survived, would have sunk merchant ships and killed Allied sailors, equally young, equally human, equally tragic. War forces impossible choices, and the Hedgehog was designed to resolve one of those choices in the Allies' favor. The weapon that U-boat crews laughed at if they didn't save countless lives by taking others. That paradox lies at the heart of all warfare technology. Tools of death that preserve life, weapons that kill to prevent killing, innovations that succeed through destruction. The Hedgehog anti-submarine projector was remarkably effective at its design purpose, killing submarines. In doing so, it helped win the Battle of the Atlantic, ensured Britain's survival, maintained the supply lines that made victory in Europe possible. History remembers the great battles, the famous commanders, the turning point decisions. But wars are also won by engineering innovations, by weapons that work when needed, by the cumulative effect of small tactical advantages repeated thousands of times. The Hedgehog was one such innovation. Ungainly, awkward-looking, dismissed as a toy by those who didn't understand it, until it proved deadly enough to change the course of history. And in the dark waters of the North Atlantic, the evidence of its effectiveness remains silent and eternal. End.